Oh, can you? Everyone, hello. This is Dr. Judy WTF, and I want to welcome you tonight and let everyone know that tonight's episode is called Generation WTF. And I was inspired to do this show because I think there are really a lot of strengths with the new generation, the millenniums, the after baby boomers, and then there are also a lot of challenges that are taking place. And I wanted to open up the discussion and ask everyone if, first of all, have any of you experienced being are any of you parents of Generation X, as they call it, babies born between 1981 and 1996, and then the Generation Y are babies born after that period of time? And there are definite challenges for Generation X and children and teenagers, young adults, because we have unique challenges. And I'm going to delve into the mind map and the system that I created for healing human disconnect and how this topic applies to it. So just for those of you who do not know me, my name is Dr. Judy Rosenberg, and I am the founder of the Psychological Healing Center and creator of the mind map system for healing human disconnect. And you can all have a free PDF copy of my book, 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗏, Healing Human Disconnect, just by asking, and we will email you a free copy. And please pay it forward, because we want people to understand the system, a system of healing that dates back to childhood wounds, how we react to them, how we encode them, how we end up falling into chaos because of these wounds, how we defend against these wounds, and eventually how we break down because of them. And I want to put this all in the context of the new millennium. And just let's start by saying that everything that I talk about through the lens of the mind map has to do with a system gone wrong. So if we have a generation of people who can do what the Freud, whatever they want, whenever they want, then what's going to be the outcome of that? So if we don't really have a generation that has good boundaries and good role models and parenting and pillars and ethics that are taught and correct role modeling, then we're going to have a generation that's very, very challenged, because they're not going to feel an internal structure of a foundational inner strength. She's been a millennial therapist for more than 5 years, according to the article, and I want to get into some of the complaints that she sees in her office. So she says that she never expected to be a millennial therapist when she entered the profession, but 5 years into practicing, she began to notice an influx of millennials seeking help, people aged 23 to 38. And what people complain about them is that they're lazy, that they're entitled, that they're self-centered, that they're oversensitive, and that they're unprepared for life. But after studying this group of people and getting to know them, what she found was a rising generation of smart and highly ambitious individuals. They're empathic, diverse, and eager to make a social impact, but there are also many anxieties that hold them back. On any given day, a handful of millennials will come into her office and express their most pressing concerns. I'm worried I'll never make enough money. I feel like a failure. I don't know if I'm setting myself up for adulthood in the right way. I have too many choices. I can't decide what to do. Yes, decision fatigue is a real thing, according to Tess Brigham. And she says that that's one of the most challenging aspects of being this particular generation. Too many choices, and so they don't know which job to turn to, and sometimes they go through many doors of many jobs and explore, and sometimes they find that the road gets narrower and narrower. But let's go back to the blueprint, the parenting styles, and where this all begins, and the outcome, which is the outcome that we see in our children is a result of the blueprint that we pass to them. So what is the best style of parenting? Well, there are different styles of parenting. Some parenting hovers around children and micromanages and controls them, and that's not always going to produce the best outcome. And some parents are very, very laissez-faire. They don't have boundaries. They don't really give their children rules and roles and morals and ethics, and that's not always the best outcome either. And some parents are able to be authoritarian, meaning that they do have rules without being overbearing and authoritative. So when children get the kind of parenting that is going to give them a structure in life, then they're going to have better decision-making capacities. And even more fundamental than that, when children get all the nourishment, the emotional nutrients that go into making a healthy human psyche, then they are really equipped for the job. But as we can see over time, families are disintegrating, and money's getting challenging, and politics are getting challenging, and the world is sometimes a very seen by many, especially because we have so much access to media, as a very dangerous place. It's going to have an impact on the next generation, obviously, as well as the ecology of the planet. Whatever we're doing to the planet, we're leaving our children with less and less resources. So this is going to have a huge impact on the next generation. So again, if we go back to the cause, which is how we're raising our children, we could see whether these children are being imbued with confidence, if they're being instilled with structure and a sense of core beliefs that lead them to feel that the world is a safe place. And in the case of millennials, we do know that the divorce rate is up, and that a lot of the children may not have the two family structure, which I call the pillars, mom and dad usually, or some level of parenting. And when that is the case, then they don't develop what I call healthy dependency. And in order to have healthy independence and to be truly strong, you have to have a sense of healthy dependence first. In other words, you've got to lean on your parents in order to then be able to invent yourself and have choices and so on. So here are some of the things that are the outcome of this new generation. Barry Schwartz, he is the author of the book, The Paradox of Choice, Why More is Less, talks about the three things that are likely to occur when young adults are faced with too many choices. And that leads to the feeling of overwhelm. And back to the family structure, when we don't have order in the family, when we don't have a place that we can go to that's safe and protective and empathic and emotionally nourishing, then we can easily feel overwhelmed by the world. So Barry talks about the impact on these young adults when faced with too many choices. And yes, there are too many choices. Just go on the internet and see how many choices there are of jobs, how many choices there are of places to eat, how many choices there are for people to date, how many choices there are for anything, really. So here's what happens. This generation is prone to make poor choices. too many choices lead to poor choices. They may become more dissatisfied with their choices because there's that aspect of, maybe I chose wrong. Maybe if I chose that career, I wouldn't be struggling now. Or maybe if I chose to live in that city, I'd have better opportunities. Or maybe if I chose to move out later than sooner from my parents, maybe I'd have my money in better order, and I'd have more of a nest egg to start life with. They also become more dissatisfied with their choices because there's always that, as I'm mentioning, this kind of a second guessing of themselves. And thirdly, they become paralyzed. They don't know what to choose, so sometimes what they do is they just don't. So one of the reasons these people go to therapy is that they find themselves anxious and depressed. The anxiety is the fear of possibly failing and making these wrong choices, and the depression is because sometimes it's so that they don't get the results that they want, and they're not as successful perhaps as their parents and their grandparents, and so they spiral down into depression. So there was another article here that I wanted to bring up. Why are millennials so anxious and unhappy? And I think he confirms some of these things. And again, he defines millennials as people between ages, born between 1981 and 1996. And he says that some of the stereotypes include entitlement, shiftlessness, egocentricity, hypersensitivity to criticism, and unable to cope with the stresses of real life. And I want to discuss a few of the things that he's talking about. So, as I mentioned, when we have healthy dependency, it leads us to healthy independence. And the more solid our family of origin, the more we are able to slowly acquire a stronger, more confident sense of self. And when we don't have this, we tend to crumble into, I'll go back to my mind map, panel number 4. Our structure disintegrates, and we find ourselves in chaos, anxiety chaos. We find ourselves in relationship chaos. We find ourselves in career chaos, and so on. So I think that when I originally thought of doing this show, I thought, well, I'm going to do a show about the WTF generation. Let's see what happens if we do whatever the Freud we want to do. Well, if we do whatever the Freud we want to do, well, we're going to get whatever the Freud results, and we know what those are. So without any planning, without anything, without leadership, then we're kind of just going to be left to our own devices. And it's going to take a lot for people to self-motivate and self-generate and get up on time in a generation of people who don't necessarily have a traditional job, and they make their own hours, and a lot of people are creating their own business, which is phenomenal. As an entrepreneurial spirit, I have a lot of respect for that. And then on the other hand, it's really, really hard when people don't end up scheduling themselves and putting themselves on some sort of a pathway. So although they are said to be diverse and open with their emotions and deeply empathic and primarily interested in making a difference in the world, which is really a very, very wonderful quality that this generation seems to be invested in, and as a result, we have beautiful philanthropical endeavors and people who enter into projects to change the world and connect people and heal people and so on. The truth is that although no one can really agree about the millennial generation, it seems that they're really stressed out. Up to 17% of them are depressed, and 14% suffer from anxiety. And many of them seek psychotherapy because of this. So this is a call-in show, everyone. Let's discuss parenting style. Let's discuss what we need to do to support our children, our grandchildren, the up-and-coming generation. And let's hear from this generation so that we can put together a plan, because oftentimes when things are done without a plan, well, they don't go so well, as you can see by panel 4, 5, 6, chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So let's turn our chaos and defenses and breakdowns into generativity and creativity and optimism and opportunities for brighter ideas, fresher ideas, and better ways to connect with other human beings, so that truly we can use not only our IQ but our EQ to further progress ourselves and progress our connection with other people. And the article talks about 14% suffering from anxiety. Millennials seek psychotherapy more than ever today. And I do see this in my practice. I see people who are very nervous about their careers. They don't know what to do. And I also see people in my practice who are very upset that their parents still want them to be doctors and lawyers, and that they're not living up to the expectation of their parents. So that's another issue, because the parents are coming from more of a traditional foundation of, let's get educated, let's go to college, let's get a degree, let's get a profession, let's learn how to be a plumber or an engineer or an architect or anything, and then let's use our education and skills to carve out a life. And that's not always the case with new millennials. They're not necessarily going to college to get educated. Oftentimes they're on the internet getting educated, and some of them are very, very self-educated. So another fear that millennials have is money. Money is one of the most common focal points for millennials' worries. Many of them have trouble finding jobs and are still living with their parents. Well, so let's talk about the ramifications of still living with your parents. So it depends at what age, and it depends in what culture. If you happen to be Persian and you're a girl and you're still living with your parents because you're not married, that is very acceptable. And so if you happen to be maybe of another culture and your parents don't necessarily want you to be living at home and you can't afford to be living at home in your own apartment, it's going to create a lot of stressors. And so what people of that generation are going to run into is clashing with a home life that they, on one hand, outgrew emotionally, but on the other hand, they didn't really outgrow yet financially, because they are not financially independent. And this is a call-in show, everyone, so please pick up the phone and let's ask the question of ourselves as parents, grandparents, millennials, and whoever is out there watching the show. And I want to apologize. I did not have a chance to post the topic of the show, and so I'm sorry if I missed some of you, and if some of you just didn't know what the Freud we were going to be talking about tonight. But this is what we're going to be talking about, and I think it's very significant, because this is the generation that is taking over the world, and we have to kind of put our heads together and give them the proper support and give them the proper guidance as to what to do with all these millions of choices and so on and so forth. So money is a big worry. And so there's a discrepancy, because on the one hand, they're outgrowing the parents who are supporting them emotionally, but yet there's a financial dependence on them, which sends a very mixed message to everyone. So the children are picking up the message from the parents that sounds something like, well, if you're going to take our money, you still have to play by our rules. And that's understandable up to a certain point, but sometimes the parents will infantilize their children and expect them to act as if they're still 16 or 17 years old when they're not, when they're actually 28 or 29 or 32. And that doesn't make for a very great dynamic. So some really interesting parenting skills have to be developed here. And they need to be created now because this is what's happening, and we need to be responsive to that. So I'd like to hear from you. If you're having a challenge with your new millennial living in your home, or you're having a challenge because you are a new millennial and you're living at home and you don't know how to treat the situation, you don't know how to grow within the confines of your home, please call in. And that number again, 323-843-2826. So money problems are only a part of the story. More importantly, those worries indicate just how concerned people are about what's coming next. And again, back to that, too many decisions. What is the right decision? Am I on the right track? And what if I make a mistake? How much leeway do I have to mess up? And what if I do mess up? And I remember reading an article lately where it talks about going through a door, which is representing a choice. And then if that choice isn't the right choice, then of course we have the right to make a course correction and choose another door. But then if we choose that other door and that job opportunity fails as well, then it may be a while until we feel that we can have a fresh opportunity, a new opportunity. And so some millennials feel that the road literally is getting narrower and narrower and narrower, and just very, very disheartening for everybody. So that's why it is so important that we don't just throw everything up in the air and say, okay, do whatever the Freud you want to. There's got to be some kind of a method to the madness. There's got to be some sort of a plan in place. There's got to be some kind of a backbone. So by backbone, I mean emotional backbone, intellectual backbone, a sense of planning, a sense of support by the family. If that person isn't going to go a traditional route and educate themselves in a trade or educate themselves by going to college, there's got to be still a plan in place, because the more structure we give the non-structure, the more the anxiety dials down. And I'll say that again because it's really important that when we throw ourselves into whatever, WTF, then it tends to make us feel unsafe and insecure. When we enter territories that are not unknown and familiar and familial, when we break away from the mold, which many millennials like to do, then there is a fear factor there. It's kind of like jumping out of the airplane and leaving the comfort zone of the old generation, the comfort zone of the known, and into the unknown. So in my book, Be the Cause, I talk about a little metaphor for that is called the precipice. So sometimes we find ourselves at the precipice, and the precipice is that choice point. Which way are we going to go? And so when we make a choice without having enough information, or when we make a choice because we have too much information and too many choices, then we're creating anxiety because we're creating chaos within ourselves. So how do we then stand on that precipice and make the kinds of choices that are going to be sustainable for us? Well, that's an interesting question. I really do want to hear from you, because I want to hear some examples of some of the challenges that new millennials are feeling, and some of the challenges that parents are feeling. And I'm a parent, and I can tell you some of the challenges that I'm feeling. I remember talking to my son, and I just wanted him to sit with me and have eye contact with me, and hey, let's just connect. And so he says, well, Mom, I am connecting. I'm connected to my friend in in wherever, in India, and I'm connected here, and I'm connected there. Yeah, but I'm sitting here right now, and you're not connecting with me. So obviously there's a disconnect even about connection, because he thinks that is connection. And of course, my experience is, and for those of you who know me, you understand that I'm all about healing human disconnect. And even with my amazing grandson, who is probably my favorite person in the whole wide world, our biggest fights are around the computer. Grandma, another 10 minutes, just another 20 minutes. Please, Grandma, I didn't have enough TV yet. I didn't have enough video games yet. So let's not forget the addictive properties of video games, of the media, the phone, and so on and so forth. And there was a word that I saw the other day which took my interest. It was a word called phubbing. And that word, of course, caught my interest because so many times I have personally felt phubbed. I have felt that the phone presided over the connection with my sitting there, whether it be my grandson or my son, or sometimes friends, or sometimes I've done it myself. I think we've all done it. So within the new millennium, I think there's a lot more phubbing going on, because I was just going to read you off some statistics here. Let's see. 200. There's an average of 250 Facebook friends, and I guess some of the people who are online frequently attend to their friends, communicate to their friends. There are 55 selfies on the average that are posted a day. 8% are sexting. There are 50 texts sent a day. And so, what the Freud is going on here? What happened to just sitting down and talking? So I think that the more complicated we are, the more social media, the more computers, the more connections there are via computers and this kind of media, the less and less we have an opportunity to connect with each other live. And what's the outcome of human disconnect? What's the outcome when we parent our children, when we're on the phone, when we're texting and sexting and playing video games? And let's get into that a little bit, because what's the core message that our children are going to pick up on? If you put that cell phone before your child, or you put that cell phone before your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, the message is what? Well, obviously that is more important. So you're not important enough. You're not special enough. You're not interesting enough. Something. So I think that when you're faced with a phone versus a live person, it's only the do the right thing to give the person the attention. Now, I understand that sometimes you've got to take a business call, or sometimes you have to handle some information on the computer, and that's understandable. However, when you're out to lunch or dinner or hanging with a friend, you've invited the friend over, then I'm just asking people to try to put the cell phone down, try to shut down the computer, and have the experience of eye-to-eye contact, and just have a conversation. How about that for a novel idea? And so I think that that is something that the new millennials have to get a taste bud for, is just quieting down and turning everything off, and having dinner together and having live face-to-face interactions as opposed to just computer interactions. And so I want to go back into this article called Why Are Millennials So Anxious and Unhappy? So money is a big deal, and the decision-making process is a big deal. And let's see what else is going on with the millennials. So at the age of 25, for example, a young person is likely to confront most of life's big decisions in the next 10 to 15 years. Metaphorically speaking, people in this position see their lives as a series of rooms, and here's where they have that room metaphor. Whenever they make a choice, they walk through one door, and then they realize that the others have closed. So here it is. Making that choice will then commit them to something. And then if they feel that they took a wrong course, then they have to close that door, and then they find themselves in a smaller room. And then if that choice doesn't work out for them, then they have to walk away. And in fact, every door selected leads to a room that is smaller and smaller, and ultimately the people making choices imagine themselves in a long hallway stretching out ahead to the edge of vision with no doors and no choices left to make. This model looks even more dire when you consider the millennials' realistic money-related fears, ending up less successful than their parents or failing to support themselves at their current standard of living. Okay, so here is, again, back to the point of too many choices and maybe not necessarily having the skills to take a more traditional job if need be, kind of like the plan B, go to college, have an education, learn a skill, and if your entrepreneurial position doesn't work out, then you've got your plan B to fall back on. And that's not to take away from creativity and having the ability to experiment and invent yourself. In addition, it's important to understand that the average late baby boomer will hold 12 different jobs in a lifetime. 12 different jobs. Try to think flexibility about your future whenever you can. If you're a baby boomer, think flexibility, because the job that you're trying right now may not lead to financial security. And remember that good decision-making must be premised upon one's genuine beliefs and values and not worries or what-ifs, which leads to another issue. So that, let's say that you start out an idea and you're really, really absolutely enamored by your idea and you believe in your idea, and it's an idea that's been cooking in your brain for a really long time, and then the rubber hits the road and you start seeing that your idea is going to cost money and you have to fund that idea, and maybe you have to set up a whole infrastructure around that idea. Maybe you're going to need employees to help deliver that idea, and maybe you're going to need more infrastructure for that idea. Well, then that's a scary notion, because a lot of people are not taught that an idea has a lot of moving parts to it, that once an idea is put in motion, investments are made. And not all baby boomers, as a matter of fact, since money is such an issue, most of them do not have deep pockets. So they may run with the idea and then run out of cash and become disillusioned, and then negative core beliefs will begin to trigger off. Negative core beliefs like, see, I told you you're just not good enough. I told you you were stupid. I told you that you're a loser. Okay, so do you see how this whole process of not having structure, not having a plan, and having unrealistic expectations can trigger off a lot? And we have a caller. So hi, you are on the couch, and your name, please.
Hi, Dr. Judy. This is Deanna calling from Michigan.
Hi, Deanna. How are you? Nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much. I'm fine. I've called in before, but I am definitely relating to your topic tonight about these children. And I had two children, one born in '94 and one born in '96, and
Okay.
I just really resonate with everything that you're saying and your concerns with our children.
Yeah, and there's so much that I wanted to say about this, and I thought, wow, well, are we just in a big hot mess? And then I started reading articles, and I thought, well, wait a minute, it's not all doom and gloom. A lot of these children are really creative, and they're entrepreneurial, and they're very artistic and so on. So let's not just jump to all the chaos and all the disconnect and all the mess. So as a parent, tell me your experience and tell me your challenges as a parent, and maybe some of the challenges that your children face being new millennials.
Well, I feel like they have the ability through their sensitivities, heart-wise, to really change the planet in a good way.
Yes.
I just think that we have to learn how to adjust to help them be the best that they can be.
Agreed.
But yet follow their heart's desires, because I think that we need to lead them into this, the days going forward of being led by their heart and making money from their passions versus
yes.
what we tell them to do.
Yes. And how is...
And...
yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. A little bit of a lag. Sorry about that, honey.
That's okay. It's okay. I just was wondering how it is for you when you see your children go down a non-traditional path. And I don't know what your family financial situation is, but if your family isn't made of money and there isn't all this inheritance coming your way or their way, then okay, so they're out on a limb, they're taking a risk, and as I was talking about before, ideas cost money. I found that out a long time ago because I'm an ideas person. It's like, geez, I have a good idea. Oh, how fun. Okay, it is fun. It's incredible. But now I've got to get secretary and infrastructure and trademarks and an office, and you know how it goes. So how do you cope, or how do you feel and deal with children when they take an untraditional path?
And my daughter, being 23, is attending the local university.
Okay.
And her dabbling with trying to gain some independence as far as living on her own didn't go well, because you have to have 3-4 roommates, because I don't have finances to back her like maybe other people may.
Yep.
And so she tried it on her own, and she was working and attending the university, and then in the lease for the apartments, they set it up that everybody's liable. So if one roommate stops paying,
yeah,
it affects the ones that are paying,
right.
And then they lose their internet.
Mm-hmm.
And so then all of a sudden you have all these finances backing up on them, even though she was responsible with her portion.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of set them up to fail if somebody else didn't pay their part. So that's just a minor part of it. Mm-hmm. Her emotional well-being and the anxiety that, like you spoke about, I totally see it. I just try to make her strong in her roots, and knowing that she has value. Every person, every child here has value, and that you try your best. And if you need somebody to listen to you about decision making or whatever, she can come to me about anything as far as communication goes.
Yeah.
That I'm here to be a sounding board and to not judge her, but try to help guide her the best I can.
Yeah.
And I believe they I think they just really do want the best for the world. Like, I believe they're all humanitarians for the most part.
I
I
do
really
too.
do.
I do too. I see that with my
And
children. I see that with my next generation children. They really do give a damn, and I admire the optimism and the idealism. It's just that it's got to be somewhat rooted, somewhat reality based.
she also has the knowingness that she can come home. And she's back home now, and she's still attending the university because, like you said, the finances, huge concern for her.
Yeah.
And I have spoke to you before. I lost my son to suicide in
now I
2014.
remember you. Of course. I was just talking about you today, as a matter of fact.
This is
I
synchronicity.
must have invited you back somehow, because I was just talking about doing a show on parents assuming responsibility and recommending that show, and how surprised I was that you were so honest and open about your experience and the suicide of your son. And so how are you?
My passion, Dr. Judy. I mean, the grief, of course, I don't feel will ever go away. But my call in tonight is because what I have learned since he's passed away to better parent my daughter.
Okay.
And I did with him as well. I've always, the roots for me and my children, even though being a single parent, me working and trying to be all of, the doctor, the nurse, the dad, the mom, you name it, taxi.
Yes.
Sitting down for meals for me, the roots of sitting down, like you said, with your grandson and communicating with your son and your grandson, and just the open dialogue, I feel, is so huge. And for a lot of these sensitives, unfortunately, like my son, he kind of suffered silently. And I know it was all the pressures that you talk about in tonight's show. That's why I'm like, wow, I have a 23-year-old, and my son would be 25 today if he was still here.
Oh, my gosh.
And I do believe that overwhelm, especially being a male, and the direction and the choices, and, it's a hard time in life. If I stop and put my feet, which I do because I'm an empath as well, into the kids' feet, there's so many choices. And even like with the technology that you're speaking of, there's pros and cons to it, but there's no replacing nature and getting out and getting your feet on the ground.
Yes.
And anchoring into your body and not being connected. I have friends all over the world on the internet too, like you were sharing with your son, but however, I know how to disconnect and be present.
And that is so key. And the fact that your daughter knows that she can come home and ultimately you have her back. And if that one door closes, or, I just wanted to make another point about people who connect with roommates, and the lesson of interconnection, which you very nicely reminded me of, which is we are very, very interconnected. And in the case of your daughter, where she chooses 2 or 3 other people to put her finances with, and she's counting on them, and they're counting on her, and they're all paying for the internet service, and then 2 out of 3 blow it, right? And the internet...
The least... Oops, I'm sorry. It was just cutting out again.
Yeah, no,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I think this microphone may have slipped, but can you hear me okay?
I can, absolutely.
Okay. So the point is that we're deeply interconnected, and that when we choose people into our lives, whether they're roommates or friends or spouses or whoever they are, we need to choose people that we can depend on, people who are who are dependable, because we're deeply interconnected. And look at what happened with your daughter. She put her money in and they didn't. And the internet company didn't care, because at the end of the day, they disconnected the service, correct?
It was actually the lease of the apartments that had it set up that way. If rent was paid by all 3 people, they could keep the internet. One person stopped paying, and everybody's internet got cut off.
Yeah.
So therefore, she couldn't do her homework at her apartment.
Right.
And, so many things online right now to do anything. I think even in grade school, you have the internet at home, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So she learned the hard way with that. Unfortunately, she couldn't count on the two people that she chose to live with her, which is hopefully a lesson.
Yeah.
And she did have that availability to come back home, but what if the other child was in the reverse role and they didn't have the opportunity to go back home?
That's right. That's right.
Just the chain effect of it. And then I do believe the overwhelm, like you speak about, is very, very real for these kids because of so many choices.
So in the case of your daughter, she is going to school, correct? Is she on break right now?
No, she's back.
Okay, so she's back in school, so she's getting some structure, yes?
Yes.
And so what's the entrepreneurial venture that she wants to engage in?
She is going into adolescence intervention, and she takes a lot of the psychology classes and whatnot. So, a therapist for adolescents, which I find just amazing. Because she came from broken roots here. I'm the only parent because I was broken having children. So the chain effect. And now I'm aware and I'm present in my body. I try my best to be the constant with her, to support her. However, the independence as well, it's kind of hard starting out for them, especially when you don't come from I don't have finances to back her with everything,
But see, she's still somewhat engaged in some kind of a structured education. So she's
absolutely
she's not just saying, Mommy, I want to make, I don't know, I was going to say Pet Rocks, but look at the person who made Pet Rocks. Quite a success, right? So who are we to talk about that, okay? But she's more grounded. So if it turns out to be that she becomes employed by a school or employed by some kind of counseling center, right? Then she's still carved out for herself a structured career that she can then apply to a company. Now, if she decides that she wants her own company, then we're back to great idea. However, ideas are expensive, and I know this personally. Okay, so go trademark everything, register your name, become an S corporation, get a staff of people, rent an office space, and go pay for a website and go pay for Google search engine operations. And, I know this as a person that runs the Psychological Healing Center. Okay?
Absolutely.
And
you are a gift.
Well, thank you. And ideas are not just like, oh, she's got a good idea. What a good idea. It's be careful when you speak those words, I've got a good idea, because now you're starting a journey, and it's a committed journey, and it requires a lot of structure. The more general your structure is, the deeper you've got to root your infrastructure. It can't all be WTF. It can't all be loose, right? You've got to pin it down somehow, some way. So is she thinking she wants her own company? Is that the entrepreneurial part of this?
She did mention that to me.
Okay.
And then I gave her the idea of, there are people that need help 24/7, and it ain't just a 9-to-5 type thing. Maybe that you have an idea there, meaning, somebody's in crisis and needs to come in and talk to you in your own, say it's down the road and you do have your own, you're the entrepreneur of the all the schooling you've been gone through, and
Yeah.
maybe there are going to be people that need 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night.
Absolutely. And she becomes the
never know.
crisis intervention hotline for young adolescents. And then she's got to hire people because she can't be up every night, 7 days a week. However, I'm a big believer in learning on other people's dime. So for those of you who are entrepreneurial, don't be embarrassed to go to work for a company and learn on their structure. Because even if you're going to have wings, you still need to pin yourself down and see what other people are up to, and kind of like put yourself in a structured environment so your mind becomes structured before you fly off with your clever entrepreneurial idea.
And I think that you gain great experience through doing that too.
Absolutely. Right.
For the kids.
Absolutely.
Starting out working for somebody else and not feeling like it's not a waste, it's not at all, because there's people that we can learn from and gain the experience from, and then you just take that knowledge and wisdom forward with you, going, the discernment within the children, going, well, I'm definitely aware of this, so I think I'm going to change that within my own business to help others. Or
exactly.
There's so much you can learn, I guess, if you want to say in the negative or positive way, whichever.
So here's the delicate challenge to our next generation. Let's not kill ideas of our children, because even Harvard Medical School and Harvard School of Business says that the most money made, I think it's Harvard School of Business, not medical school, the most money made are made by people who are passionate about what they do.
I think that's key to these children.
It
is. I think that they have the ability to change the planet around from the state that it's at.
Yes.
I just feel that we need to strongly support them in a neutral position of course, wanting the best, but not projecting onto them. I come from that projection myself, so now I have awareness as her mother.
Okay, so now we can't do that. We can't tell our children what to do. We can't tell our children that if you don't become a doctor, or you don't become a lawyer, or you don't become this or that, then you failed in our eyes, because I have plenty of people in my office who have parents like that, and it's devastating because they see themselves through their parents' eyes, and they absolutely feel like failures because they're not filling their parents' expectations. So a lot of children, young adolescents, young people are just saying, forget that. No, I'm my own person now. Good for you. It's just that on the pathway to being your own person, you can't be so naive as to think that an idea is just going to fly. It's not just going to fly. You need all of these underpinnings in order to make them fly. And there's nothing wrong with going to work for a company so that you can understand what it's like to get up early in the morning and how to deal with customers and how to organize corporate time and have corporate meetings and policies and procedures. I remember when I started my psychological healing center, my son, who helps me a great deal with search engine optimization, and he does all the back end of the computer stuff, and he goes, Mom, you're going to have to learn how to learn every aspect of your company. And I'm saying, Mike, I don't want to learn every aspect of my company. I just want to be a psychologist. Like, leave me alone. He goes, no, Mom, you're going to have to sit down and have policies and procedures. And I'm thinking, what? What's policies and procedures? So there's nothing wrong with working for a company that has policies and procedures so that you could see the blueprint of other people's success. And it's only through learning how other people got successful, because don't forget that the corporation that you're going to work for, potentially work for, was also an idea. And somehow they took their idea and they manifested it to the point where they now have some kind of a structure and a lot of employees, possibly working for them, and they now have their policies and procedures, and everything's nicely patented and trademarked, and right, and the thing just hums like a nice piece of organized corporate system. So that's part of entrepreneurship, is to learn that, and learn at other people's learn through other people's ideas, and learn through other people's systems. So I know
I think that I do that still today.
Yeah.
As just even on the path that I'm on, to be able to help others, I love the diversity, and I love to learn from other people. Wow, I'm really echoing. Sorry.
No, I don't hear it. It's pretty good from my end.
Okay, I just think the children.
Yeah, are you still
way
there?
More wise than we give credit for, and I feel that just being a strong guide for them, and
And I think you're right. Have their back. Don't kill their ideas. Douse them with some reality, and let them experiment and fail. They're going to fail sometimes, most of the time, and then try again, and you're there to help them to stand up again. And then you're there to guide them and ask them the right questions. Be Socratic. So, honey, what did you learn? What do you think is missing? What do you think is needed to have this adolescent treatment center that's going to be available to children? Why don't you work for an adolescent treatment center for a while and see how they do it? So that's how we create entrepreneurs of our children. We're not locking them in and saying, you're going to have to work for that company, or you're going to have to be a lawyer or a doctor. But yeah, do work for people who have established something, and then take it and morph it and make it your own, and then fly.
Absolutely.
And as parents,
I
we
believe
back
if
them
they're
up.
If they're guided by their passions, and you just nailed it to what you said about letting them know that just because something didn't work out, if we want to use the word fail, it doesn't mean that they are a failure. There's another opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel that self-talk within them, like, I just see it. They're sensitive. They have big hearts.
We don't want to kill their spirit. We just don't want to, as I like to say, narce out their ideas and narce out their spirits. We don't want to do that. So I know in the name of time, I'm going to go to my usual Shrink That Tune. And tell me again, are you from where?
Michigan.
Michigan. Okay. Well, so nice to hear from you. Please keep in touch with me. Okay. And you have a copy of my book,
Judy.
Yes?
Pardon me?
You have a copy of my book?
I do have the PDF. Yes, I do.
Okay. Call me. I have a present for you, but you have to call me, and I have a present for you.
I will do that. Is it the same number?
No. I'll announce it. 310-739-4491.
Okay, I'll replay the show, Dr. Judy. I shared it anyway, so.
Okay.
I appreciate your time tonight, and thank you so much.
Okay, you're very, very welcome. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And I'm going to go to Shrink That Tune. And unfortunately, whoever printed out my song did not print out the author of the song. So please look it up. I don't want to discredit the musicians. The name of the song is called Bad Reputation, and this is a song about millenniums. So here it is. Are we out of time officially?
You can go. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I don't give a damn about my reputation. You're living the past. It's a new generation. A girl can do what she wants to do, and that's what I'm going to do. And I don't give a damn about my bad reputation. Oh, no, not me. And I don't give a damn about my reputation. Never said I wanted to improve my station. I'm only doing good when I'm having fun, and I don't have to please no one. And then it just keeps going about their reputation, and I don't really care if you think I'm strange. I ain't going to change. I'm never going to care about my bad reputation. Oh, no, No, not me, pedal boys. I don't give a damn, and everyone can say that what they want to say. It never gets better anyway. So why should I care? So this is about a bad reputation. It's a new generation. And I only feel good when I got no pain. That's how I'm going to stay. Because this song is really about someone who gave up and only could live in the moment. And that's one of the consequences of no structure and parenting gone wrong, when the person doesn't feel like they have the skills, they have the pillars to support them. So what do they have left? Just to live in the moment and have fun. And that's the dark side of doing WTF, basically to do whatever you want. That's just going a little too far. So if you're creative and you want to carve out something for yourself, you can do that. And just remember, you got to have some kind of an underpinning and structure in order to fly. Even airplanes have structures, and that's why they can fly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Good night, everyone.